What's up, everybody? Trip Morgan, finally back here for Panthersaurus, ready to talk about some Panthers draft prospects. I've been telling you we're going to get some people in here and kind of each week lead up to the draft on April 26th. The Panthers' first pick at 24, and today I've got a special guest. I'm going to bring him on right here in a minute, but first, let's hit this intro. How about it? So what's up, everybody? Like I said, Trip Morgan here, Panthersaurus. Thank you for joining. If you would, go ahead and like and follow us right here on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at Panthersaurus. We're also on Instagram as well. It's Panthers_source, of course. Not up there much, but you can get a lot of our action right there on Twitter. You can watch these shows later on YouTube. We upload them there. But right now, like I said before, I've got special guest Edgar Salmingo, formerly contributed with USA Today, I believe it was, and SB Nation. Is that correct, Edgar?
That's right.
Yeah, cool stuff. And I'm glad you were able to make time to come up here. I know you're busy, and you also made some special time because you're far west as you can possibly get in the U.S. from us here in North Carolina and still repping Carolina hard.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I'm a big fan of you, Trip, big fan of Panthersaurus. You know, like back in the day when there's like nowhere to find Panthers information, so all these sites that come up and put in their hard work and do the grind to make sure that we get our Panthers news analysis. Like, I'm just grateful for you and just having me on.
Oh yeah, dude, definitely. And look, I'm loving myself. I'm loving all the different media. You got the Riot Report popped up, and all good friends of ours there, and I'm loving what they're doing. Of course, the guys over at WFNZ in Charlotte have always been fun to listen to. I know you've joined their show, so. But what really caught me, how I actually found you, Edgar, was, and one of the reasons you kind of blew up on Twitter the last couple of years is you, Gene, and a couple of other guys, I think Billy Marshall as well, started tracking prospect visits for Carolina on through Twitter, making lists. Just talk about that a little bit and how that came to be and why y'all started that, I guess. I mean, obviously we know you wanted to track them and you're a big Panthers fan, but how did that all kind of come about?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, I've been following the Panthers since 95, right? And since I was a little kid and grew up, just like a short background, like I'm here from LA, but when I started liking football, there was no teams in LA. Now we have two teams, but I just picked a team that was cool, that just started, had a cool logo, so I picked the Carolina Panthers. And it was hard to get information out here, and it was just fun to follow a team and everything that kind of believed in the culture and all that stuff. I really dug. And one thing I really, really loved growing up early on was like draft. The idea of like you can take any team can turn around their whole culture, their whole team, their winning attitude just by the draft, right?
Yep.
So I'd get draft guides. I would look at blurbs in Sporting News or Sports Illustrated about the Panthers. And just recently, I stumbled upon Gene when he started putting out, this visit and this contact, and they talked to this guy at the combine, and they talked to this guy at a pro day. And what ended up happening was when the draft came out and who they ended up selecting, I was like, wait a minute, like all these people either were in contact or they saw him at a pro day or they worked him out, brought him in for a private visit. So I was like, you know what, I want to see more about who these are. So when the day comes, I kind of have a sense of who they're looking at, right? And so last year was really my first year kind of really digging in. Gene had been doing this for many years, so every time I saw stuff, I passed along stuff to him.
Oh, yeah.
But he is great. He does great work. His stuff is at panthergf.wordpress.com, and his big thing is that spreadsheet / like grid of all the prospects, all the ways they've contacted them, and then all the sources that he got that information from. So if you want to check it out, and then Billy's been really good. Billy Marshall from Cat Scratch Reader, really good at like identifying people in pro days, like pictures and movies, and like, oh, I think I see assistant wide receiver coach Jericho Cotchery in the background, or this scout. I'm just like,
yeah, and then he'll name people that I'm sure most, like some people, Panther fans out there, have no idea who they are until he actually like tells them, and it's like, how the hell did you find this guy? Like in a picture somewhere. But that's what you do. I mean, you hit the ground and you dig and you find the work. And it goes to show, like you just mentioned, you mentioned that one draft was like, holy crap, they actually visited. Like, these visits mean something. They're not just out here, like, each team gets allotted 30 visits. They're not just out here picking a random 30 guys and say, let's see who we get. They actually do the work. They watch the film on these things, obviously.
Yep.
And it's showing, and knowing these lists, these people who visit and stuff and the interest is huge to gauge on potential prospects. We saw it last year with Christian McCaffrey, and everybody, when it first started, you know, after the season ended, everybody was like, they're not picking Christian McCaffrey at pick number 8. It ain't going to happen, guys. I mean, even at the time, to start with, I was kind of like, that seems a little high. And then a couple weeks, I was like, okay, this hype is real. And then sure enough, it happened. But yeah, look, Gene's site is killer. This article and list he keeps updated is really well. It's simple to follow. Like Edgar said, it's panthergf.wordpress.com. Definitely check that out. But Edgar, you're on the show for a special reason tonight with those prospects. You've given me 3 prospects you like that potentially fit the Panthers, and we're going to start off with cornerback Josh Jackson out of Iowa. Obviously, he's a top prospect in the cornerback position right now. Could expect to go round 1. Huge season in 2017. What do you like about him?
So to start this off, I mean, part of what also made me kind of popular in Twitter was like I was really good at predicting like who the Panthers are going to pick. So 2 years ago, before the draft, I said, hey, Vernon Butler. Like, they visited with him, they met with him. Like, all the signs show that like they really want Vernon Butler. And they drafted him. Last year, same thing with Christian McCaffrey. This year, it's a little bit different. It's a new GM, so it's no longer Dave Gettleman. It's now Marty Herney, plays by a different style. Gettleman was really easy to read. Like, he wasn't like this complex book. It's like, we know what we're going to do.
You can read between the lines with Gettleman, that's for sure.
Yes. For me, 2 dream picks for me. I mean, there's probably going to – I'll like whoever they pick, but 2 dream ones for me are going to be at quarterback. One is this one, Josh Jackson from Iowa. What I really dig with him, and the other one I love is Jair Alexander out of Louisville. And both the Panthers have shown some interest in or had some contact with him, right?
Right.
And Josh Jackson, why I would love him, is like he fills a role that hasn't been filled since Josh Norman left, right? Mm-hmm. So think of it this way. In 2015, that big year, 15-1, go to the Super Bowl, that big year, yeah, you had that front 4 that was fierce, and you were backed up by Luke and by TD, right?
Yep.
Great defense. But what made that really special was that back end with Josh Norman and Kirk Coleman getting all these turnovers, right? Tons of interceptions, tons of big plays.
Flip
the field. I remember that game in Jacksonville where Josh Norman literally had that pick 6 and turned the game where I thought they were going to lose to Jacksonville, right?
Yep.
And so now you look at the Panthers' defense, how they're constructed. Who's that playmaker at the end, right? If you want to use a baseball metaphor, like who's going to hit the home runs? You have all these people that will hit singles.
Yep.
Like, they're not going to flip the field. They're not going to – even if Julius Peppers or Kawan Short gets some pressure, who's going to take the ball or who's going to, like, make a big play? And right now they don't have it. And that was Josh Jackson's claim to fame at Iowa. He had – so many interceptions, and part of the reason why he was so good was he was a former wide receiver.
Yeah.
So his ball skills are incredible. I joke around, like, if he was drafted by the Panthers, he might be their best wide receiver also, right? Because his ball skills are amazing. His claim to fame highlight was his pick that looked like
Odell Beckham.
Odell Beckham,
yep.
Right? And so I'm missing, or I want, a guy that makes turnovers, that makes big plays, right? Jair Alexander is also good. He's that shutdown corner. He had an off year last year because he was injured. But give me a guy that could create turnovers, that could flip the field, that can get the ball back in Cam's hands. That's why, like, it's such a joy to watch Josh Jackson and watch his film.
Yeah, definitely. Some combine numbers for y'all. I just put up some of Josh Jackson's highlights so these people can watch. That one interception you're talking about in that Ohio State game, which he actually had 3 picks in that game, was insane. That catch was insane. Overall, in 2017 alone, 48 tackles total, 8 interceptions, 18 passes defensed. That's ridiculous. And then he also had 2 he returned 2 of those for touchdowns, and I think he had a couple of forced fumbles in 2017. I think I read as well. But combine numbers, 4.56 40, solid. 18 bench reps, good. A big number, the vertical, 38-inch. And then a 10-plus inch broad and a 6.86 3-cone. Obviously, the 38-inch vert is something, you know, you look at for your explosion. And if you watch his film, like when he goes up, like you were talking about, ball hawking these balls, he has that, top point of catch ability to outbeat any receiver on the field. And
Mhm.
actually, his NFL comparison from NFL.com draft experts is been Josh Norman.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, and he's not a perfect prospect. So you watch one film, you look to see his technique be a little bit clearer. His hips are a little bit tight and not as loose. But you trade that off with the possibility that any ball thrown to him could potentially be a turnover, or he forces some fumbles. I remember, in that same 2015 year, whether it was the peanut punch or the forced fumbles at Josh Norman, like those make big differences in games when games are decided by 3 points, 7 points or less. Just getting that one turnover makes a big deal, and we saw that last year, these last 2 years, when you don't have forcing turnovers on defense. That's a lot to ask out of your offense to pick up the slack.
Yeah, and I saw one of those interceptions actually that stuck out to me in that Ohio State game. He was dropping into cover 3 and read it looked like to me like a flood concept. The inside receiver was running a deep out, and he came back down, read the quarterback, and just jumped the route completely. That was one he took for a pick six, I believe it was.
Yep. And that was one of my favorite highlights too.
Yeah,
I mean, just totally read the
instinctual.
Yes.
So again, I agree with you 100% there. I wouldn't be mad. Here's my whole thing going into the draft, and I guess we could kind of lead with this. I know a lot of talk has been about wide receiver. Me and you have kind of mentioned it about building that wide receiver room in the draft, getting somebody in the first round. A lot of talk was around DJ Moore. The Panthers are showing heavy interest in him, and even some in Calvin Ridley as well. But my whole thing is I think, they hit. Granted, free agency we didn't make any big splash hits at wide receiver in free agency, but I think that room, if it's healthy, we don't need to spend a 24th pick at wide receiver in the first round. I think there are great guys like one of your other prospects we'll get to here shortly could be in that second round or third round. I think we can hit guys there and get a solid wide receiver for more depth and competition later in the round. I think secondary right now, mainly safety obviously is one, but even cornerbacks, like you mentioned earlier, we have role player guys, solid guys, but we don't have that Josh Norman attitude where a guy can flip a game in one play.
Yep. And I'm reading tea leaves here over and over again in all of Marty Herney's, general manager Marty Herney's interviews this offseason. Has always said speed and athleticism at skill positions, offense and defense, right? And it's not that I'm hating on the wide receivers. It's not like I don't like Calvin Ridley or DJ Moore.
Right.
But in terms of like value, in terms of like you can get some really good wide receivers later, I mean, you hit on a Josh Jackson or a Jair Alexander who have like insane athletic ability matched with production. I mean, you could still set yourself up really well, whereas you flip it and you take a wide receiver at 24, it really muddies or really makes the pool really shallow for other positions if you go wide receiver at 24.
Yeah, I mean, you could go. I mean, without trading up, obviously, which we don't want to necessarily lose picks either here.
Right.
You go from that elite level, and you also, another big thing about the first round is the fifth-year option. I mean, that's something else that's always kind of factored in as well. But we agree. I think I like some of these wide receivers. I'd love to have a DJ Moore or Calvin Ridley, but right now I think we could get. Let's see, first round, I think we can get a better elite guy for our secondary and defense that we need, and in the second round get that wide receiver, or third round even. I mean, there's some guys I really like, and actually I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next one. I'm just excited to talk about them. I talk about him all the time. Right. I really like him, especially after I was interested to see what he did at his combine. But obviously he didn't play. He had a foot fracture. The guy I'm talking about is wide receiver Anthony Miller out of Memphis. He did do his pro day. He was able to do that. He had 22 bench reps at the combine. He did that. He just couldn't participate in running drills. Ran an unofficial 4.48 and had a 39-inch vertical. The 39-inch vertical was second among all wide receivers who have tested the vertical in 2018. This kid is got playmaker written all over him. What do you think?
I think he's the type of guy in terms of filling a role for the Panthers. So I said, hey, Josh Jackson fills a Josh Norman role. Mm-hmm. How about somebody that fills in that Steve Smith role? Not the way that Steve Smith plays, but how about that swagger? How about that attitude? How about that chip on the shoulder? How about like, this is my ball, or I'm going to get the yards that I want and like grab it, right? The Panthers don't have that right now in their wide receiver core. I mean, I like Devin Funchess. I like Greg Olsen. I like Torrey Smith. I like but where's that swagger? Where's that like the heart and the soul like of of the wide receiver role, and it's not there. And when you see Anthony Miller, when you see him run his routes, when you see him play the game, you see like a passion for like he runs routes angry in a sense. Like he is aggressive at how he does things. And I know one of the big knocks on him is his age. So he's coming in or he's starting the year, potentially next year for an NFL team at age 24. And so people are like, oh, well, he should be dominating these kids that are 21, 20 years old. But even still, like even at 24 years old, like that translates to the next level. If you have production and you have that swagger, you have that attitude, you have that like that grit that I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to take this many yards and you can't stop me. Like that's what I feel like has been missing in that wide receiver room with Cam Newton, or pairing him with Cam Newton has been missing for many years since Steve Smith has gone.
Yeah. And as like I said earlier, and it's another thing too, where it's, right now, I think this wide receiver room it's had competition in the past. I mean, obviously it has competition every year, but as far as the quality, I mean, these aren't like I said before, these aren't elite guys, but this room, there are a lot of guys that are going to be forced to separate themselves and do things, and adding an Anthony Miller in there and on top of being depth, I think would just be huge for this wide receiver room. He brings that extra thing, and Riot Report posted a video the other day talking about gauging how he felt that the Panthers' interest was, and they were like, they really liked me as kind of a slot playmaker role, which I think is obviously one of the things we need. I know a lot of people like Curtis Samuel there, and that's probably a spot he would thrive in. But look, the fact of the matter is, we still don't like Curtis Samuel is flashed. Yes, like I'm a big fan of Curtis Samuel. But if he can't stay on the field, we got to have somebody there to back him up. All these things on paper mean nothing until they're transcribing to the field. If you're losing a guy like Curtis Samuel and you have an Anthony Miller, I mean, I'm just picturing, obviously for fun things here, Anthony Miller, Curtis Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, Demir Berg, Greg Olsen, Devin Funchess. I mean, that sounds like fun on the field to me with Cam Newton behind center.
Yeah, and think about him as in the slot. Sometimes they use Greg Olsen in the slot. So, interchanging Greg Olsen and Anthony Miller in that slot, like you can't even put a guy that can guard Greg Olsen, let alone put somebody in with Anthony Miller, and that'd just be a dangerous combo for Cam. Someone who could eat the middle of the field. You're using Devin Funchess on the outside. You could use a guy like Curtis Samuel with his speed, his 4.3 speed, and Torrey Smith speed on the outside. But who's going to eat up yards on the inside, or just give him a short route? And I know they want to use Christian McCaffrey in that role a little bit. But with the departure of Jonathan Stewart, who's going to take more of that role that can just give him more easy layup passes that could just dominate on the inside that hasn't been there for a while?
Yep, and we were talking about Odell Beckham catches earlier. Anthony Miller had one himself against, I think it was USF in 2016 season, and it was pretty ridiculous as well. And he got both feet down, not just one. It was pretty ridiculous as well. He's got great hands too. I mean, that's for his size. He's not just like one guy we talked about last year, Edgar, was Carlos Henderson coming out in the draft last year that we liked as a deep sleeper. And because of his playmaking ability. But the difference here, the thing with him was his small frame, which is kind of a knock on Anthony Miller, but Miller is much stockier and more well-built. Like, he could take physicality. And I hate Steve Smith comparisons because, obviously, Steve Smith is, like, one of my greatest all-time athletes. He was a Panther. But as far as build goes, Anthony Miller, I mean, you see him out there with his shirt off, and this guy is just like a tank. I mean, you wouldn't expect it coming out of him, but he's got that stocky mentality at 5'10", and 192 pounds. So I'm high on him, and I'm really high on his value more so. That's really what drives me to him. You're talking about a guy you can get in the second or third round. New Orleans just had him in for a visit after Carolina. I had him in this past Monday. I really that would be my luck is he go to a damn division rival.
Yeah, and they said that's a good way to determine if a guy's really good. Like, could you picture this guy on your rival team? How would you make you feel? And that I feel the same way that you do. If this guy goes to New Orleans, like, good luck trying to guard him or having to face him twice a year.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm gonna hit some of these Facebook comments. We got people pouring in here. Johans West is saying corner is cool, but safety is better. We need a hard-hitting enforcer that can keep people lined up right and make Evans, Julio, Thomas think a little bit. We need to address the secondary, safety, and corner. What are your thoughts on that? I know, like I said, I like Josh Jackson, but I know Justin Reed is a guy you could probably get in the second round, not necessarily at the Panthers pick, but there's no guarantee he'll be there when the Panthers do pick at, I think it's 55, isn't that right? Yeah,
Yep.
I'm not sure he'll be a guy that'll be there. And sometimes you just have to pick. It sounds bad, but sometimes you need to pick the guy that you want at a certain position, not necessarily out of need, but
Right.
he might be one of those best players available that also fits need. Because Carolina this year going into the draft has a lot of holes to fill. Coming out of free agency, we knew this, talking about releasing Kurt Coleman. Didn't do a whole lot to address the safety situation. Is still kind of thin. I don't see Searcy being their main guy, but Justin Reed is a smart, instinctual safety. And I'm kind of with you, Hans. I like him at pick 24 as of right now. I mean, my picks changed 3 times already this year, so it might change again. But what are your thoughts there as far as what he was talking about between corner and safety and making the top wide receivers in the division fight?
Yeah, look, they need help at safety, right? So
Yeah.
they lost to Kurt Coleman, and they replaced it with a guy, Denor Searcy, who's not necessarily a big-time safety. You got Mike Adams, who's back there at age, 37, 38 years
Yep.
old, right? So, like, everybody looks at safety like,
I think
man,
he's
they really
about to
need
be
a safety.
39, actually. Yeah.
39. See, like, I'm giving him credit for being young, but he's really old, right? But the fact of the matter is just, like, again, reading tea leaves, right? So looking at how Marty Herney in the past has operated, he's never really put a lot of resources into safety. Maybe it's how they want to build defenses. Maybe it's just the way his coaching staffs like their defenses, but they just really don't spend as much resources or draft capital or free agent money on safeties. He's gotten by. I mean, I don't want to share names like Haruki Nakamura or things like that. Godfrey, like, he picks up safeties that do pretty well, that don't necessarily you have to spend a lot to get them, right? So would I like a Justin Reed? Sure. Like, he's good, he's talented, he can play the slot, he can play enforcer, he can play deep, the single high safety. But just reading tea leaves, I feel like, hey, the way that Marty Herney has operated in the past, and I could be completely wrong, but he just doesn't invest as much in safety because he wants to concentrate his resources on other positions first.
Yeah, and that's a good point. One of the things I'm still hoping, though, is Marty Herney has learned from mistakes in the past. But no, but honestly, we can't. This is one of those things too. Is we can't harp on Herney too much with first round draft picks. I mean, he's done pretty well with his first round draft picks. Now, granted, a lot of his have been in the top 10, 15, but he's coming into this one, first one back. I'm interested to see what he does. And I'm looking up here at Gene's list, y'all's list that y'all put together. We were talking about earlier. Justin Reed actually has a combine, a private visit, and a pro day visit with the Panthers, or two meetings and a private visit with the Panthers. Josh Jackson, guys, has, let's see here, where was he? Oh, right here, a combine and a pro day meeting. And do you know have you seen anything where they're listed as bringing him in for a potential visit? It's not listed here, but I didn't know if you'd seen anything.
Justin Reed?
No, Josh Jackson.
Josh Jackson, no. They met with him, but they haven't brought him in for a visit yet. So, like,
Okay.
In terms of, like, the contact, they're more likely to, say, fall more in love with Jair Alexander, who's local. They brought him in.
Yeah, that's right.
Still waiting. They had their assistant DB coach in at Iowa's Pro Day, but other than that, there hasn't been any, like, paper trail in terms of interest in Josh Jackson.
Gotcha, cool. Thomas Hayes saying Josh Jackson would be defensive rookie of the year behind our front seven. I would love that, but I mean, until it happens. And look, that's another thing. We're still kind of the front four. We got Julius Peppers, obviously. You got Mario Addison, but these guys, Peppers is up there. He's a freak of nature, ageless wonder, much like Steve Smith was going into his final years. And then you got Mario Addison, who I think is he turning 30 or 31 this year? Do you remember? But
I don't remember, but it's up there too.
Yeah, he's up there
31.
too. Yeah, we need more youth, which brings us to your third guy, which is a great lead into defensive end Duke Ejiofor from Wake Forest. This is a guy that you could get in the later rounds potentially, another value pick, which is I'm huge on, and I'm glad to see you putting these guys up here. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen from Duke Ejiofor.
So in terms of defensive end, I know there's a love for guys like Marcus Davenport, Harold Landry, Bradley Chubb, but they're probably not going to 24. If they're really good at what they do, they're not falling to 24.
Not
right?
at all.
So started to look at guys that, like, for me, like for my bang for my buck, I like guys that are defensive ends that are like technical like technicians, right? They're like these magicians that no matter what type of offensive lineman you give me, I can give you the spin, I can give you the swim, I can give you the speed to power, right? And so a couple guys I like. The other one is Ohio State's Sam Hubbard, defensive end. But the one I really dig is Duke Ejiofor because he's starting to fly under the radar, right? So he has a torn labrum or some sort of shoulder injury, right? So he's not going to be he hasn't really fully participated in some of these athletic testing. But when you just put on his tape, man, like he wins in many ways. And you love that, right? So I forgot which draft article I read. They gave a comp of Emmanuel Ogbah when he came out of Oklahoma State and now Cleveland Brown. But this type of guy that like you put him on the edge and you could win with many different ways. They saw that you could run through his highlights. You could spin on the inside and win, spin on the outside and win, a swim, a rip, right?
Yep, his technique's fantastic.
Yeah, and on top of that, like not only on the outside, I'd say like a 7 technique, but they also move him down on the inside. So again, reading tea leaves, predicting what Marty Herney likes in his defensive line, he loves guys that he could pick kind of like later and could go inside or out, right? He can go 5 technique, 3 technique, 7 technique. Like I could move him along the line, right? And I think of someone like Charles Johnson. When you pick up Charles Johnson, he's a 3rd round pick, but he was like a beast in run stuffing, and they sometimes kicked him in on the inside. So I could picture Duke Ejiofor or someone like Sam Hubbard that could be the future Charles Johnson that he invested in later on at defensive end because the value probably won't be there at 24.
Yeah, and I think I still believe that's one of the reasons Charles Johnson was brought back for the last 2 years was his run stopping ability. I think they really were missing that. Before they got Peppers back. And, Peppers is obviously a pass rush specialist, but he's still good. He's still got that athleticism to do those things. And, I've watched some of this film on Duke Ejiofor now, and I've read, analysis from different scouts and analysts and whatnot. And one of the things I saw in a couple were they were concerned about his motor. And the films the couple of games I've watched, I didn't see that at all. Like I actually saw this guy bring it every play. It seemed like he was always going after. I mean, you see him in here tackling Lamar Jackson in open space. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's pretty insane. So I didn't see that necessarily. But his technique, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it was kind of creepy. You were following the highlight reel talking about him moving inside. They were showing an inside move, and so that was pretty perfect. But, yeah, I think his technique's really well. And I actually hadn't seen much on him until you brought him up to me. So I'm definitely more intrigued now on that.
Yeah, and I remember, him and Sam Hubbard kind of putting them in the same category. Like their biggest other critiques about them, again, these guys aren't perfect prospects, is their athletic ability. Maybe they're not the more bursty or the more like explosive athletes that you'll see at defensive end. Right. The more technicians. But remember, if in terms of like the motor concern, let's not forget like K'Wan Short had those same concerns when they drafted him a few years back, and that motor thing I think can be overblown based on what people watch or want to watch.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's just like, I mean, we've seen it before with guys like a Josh Norman who was picked in the later rounds and came out and was a huge steal in the long run. It took him a few years to get there, but I think that was more so a little bit of his attitude at his age at the time. I know a lot of people give Rivera grief about playing, veteran guys over younger guys, but I'm not sure I completely buy into that as some others do. But either way, and defensive end is also another position that sometimes an NFL can take a year or so to adjust. Yeah, you get your freaks like Myles Garrett and stuff like that, but those are the guys that are worth a top 10 pick. That's typically why you see guys like a Chubb gone. I mean, you see they're gone in the top 5, top 10. So yeah, let's roll through some of these comments here. They pile up on me again.
Sure.
Johans was commenting on Josh Jackson, saying he does remind him a little bit of Josh Norman. And then he also said, talking about your receivers comment, he said, we just need to re-sign Burson. Yeah, funny guys up here. And Lamar talking about we need a tank at running back. Chubb's the guy. What are your thoughts on some of the running backs in this class? I don't see us going obviously first round with a running back. I don't see that at all. But this is a class where you could also get again another guy later in these rounds to maybe bring in and see what he can do, because Cameron Artis-Payne's supposed to get that first look this year. We've heard this in the past about how Rivera said this year he wished he'd gotten more reps last year. He's shown flashes. Do you think he can put it together? Or do you think they're going to try to bring in a guy to back up Christian McCaffrey? I'm not necessarily against Christian McCaffrey being more of an every down back either, by the way, but I'll let you hit on that and what your thoughts are with that.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. One, I'm all in on Christian McCaffrey being a 3-down back. I mean, people are going to knock him for his size or his frame, or he might be broken if you put him out there too many times. But, last year during the draft time, I was like, hey, in terms of like the same size and speed and 3-cone time, compared a lot to LaShawn McCoy, right? And people don't judge LaShawn McCoy. It's like, oh, don't put LaShawn McCoy out there for 3 times. So, I think that could happen. Will they do it? It's doubtful. I think they like to, put in a rotation, right? I think they like him at that. I think they like motioning him out and getting him in that slot spot still some, too. I still think they're going to want to try to do that more. Yeah, and I still think they still have – I think Norv hopefully has plays in the playbook for having Curtis Samuel and Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. We talked about that all last offseason, right? That killed Miami last year. Woo. Yes. And even I remember that first drive against the Green Bay Packers last year where they had no answer for Christian McCaffrey, whether it was wide receiver, whether it was running outside, pitch, whatever, they had no idea how to stop him. So just if people say oh, I don't know if they could run Christian McCaffrey full time, put on the tape of him against Green Bay last year, and they had no answer for him. And moving on to Cap, I've always been a big fan of Cap. I think they never gave him enough opportunities to do so. When they had the opportunities, he got over 100 yards. He got the touchdowns. I think he's capable. If I were them, what I would think about, and I heard analysts like Josh Norris talk about this, people want to pick a draft pick for the Panthers and make it like a hammer, right? So you got Christian McCaffrey, who's this lightning, who's this this jitterbug, this speed guy. They need a hammer. They need a Bo Scarborough. They need a LeGarrette Blount. They need a Mike Tolbert. They need the balance it. And people like Josh are saying, no, you should get a second guy that's like Christian McCaffrey, right? So if Christian McCaffrey's out, you put another guy in, and how do you guard him because you have 2 of the same person, right? So my position on the running back, or at least philosophy for this class, is you either go high or you just wait, right? Right. I don't think my crush, I love Darius Geis, but we already invested a top 10 pick in running back. I don't think he falls to 24, so I'm not really holding much hope into Darius Geis. But later, there's some guys I've talked about on WFNZ, Josh Norris, but I feel a guy like John Kelly out of Tennessee. He's a mini Marshawn Lynch. Ooh. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He is ferocious. When we talk about bringing swagger back into that offense, if you paired Anthony Miller with somebody like a John Kelly in the running back in the backfield, I mean, you just instantly upgraded the chip on the shoulder of the offense, right? Guys like that later. I posted up a clip. I know you retweeted Ito Smith. Oh yeah, Southern Miss. He's also a guy that's just runs between the tackles or doesn't go down easily and also catches passes. So I see as they're going through their process and contacting different running backs, I see the Panthers looking at more of that role of a running back that can also catch passes and do more than a traditional hammer like a Bo Scarborough. So I'm intrigued, but also hopeful that they go in that route versus getting a plotter that only runs for first and second down. Yeah, I'm looking here, just glancing at the running back visits list y'all have up here, and just trying to gauge some of the interest. And it's just going off this list. Obviously, this isn't the only thing, but it is a good gauge. And they've showed interest in Rashad Penny, San Diego State, Combine and Pro Day meetings. Sony Michel, Georgia at Combine, which Combine they kind of meet with just about every known player there. Right. Jalen Samuels, though, they did have, what was that, Senior Bowl meeting and a Pro Day meeting. Yep. And outside of that, Lawrence Pittman, Wingate, was I think he was a local visit. But outside of that, really there hasn't been a whole lot of interest in running backs. And I think that just goes back to the point, I don't think the coaching staff and Carolina thinks they're in as bad a spot at running back as some fans think they are. We have Christian McCaffrey. I think last year people have the mindset of McCaffrey being lined up all over the field in that receiver. And like you said, Jonathan Stewart's gone now. Who's going to take those spots at running back? You're going to be lining McCaffrey up out here. No, I think they want to get another receiver somewhere so they don't have to do that. McCaffrey, towards the end of the year, due to injuries at wide receiver, was being lined up out there to help fill a void because
we didn't have anybody. I mean, we just didn't. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think
I will say the one thing that they will miss without Jonathan Stewart is who's going to be a good pass protector out there in the backfield, right? Christian McCaffrey is still unproven. Cap is okay, but like who's going to be out there backing up and can take some blocks? I mean, Darrell Williams and Matt Khalil aren't the best edge offensive tackles out there. So who's going to pick up the slack for Jonathan Stewart in terms of pass protection? But I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised if they saw Cap in a more of a starring role.
Yeah, and I've been back, like as soon as I jump back on, I've always liked Cap as well, and as soon as I start pumping him up and he starts showing these flashes last year, he has a couple of those things you're like, oh man, he's not quite ready. And a couple of, last year he dropped, a toss play on a run, and it was fumbled, and he just flat out dropped it. He wasn't looking at it, and you've seen that happen a couple times with him. And then it's like you mentioned, pass protection has actually been one of the things a lot of people believe is why he hasn't gotten as many looks behind Jonathan Stewart, and it's got to be a key. I mean, this offensive line isn't great. We just lost Andrew Norwell. They're obviously not as terrible as they have been in the past, but we can't be bringing in max protection on passing plays every time for Cam, because you're eliminating options at wide receiver and spacing the field for those playmakers. So you can't be doing that. You can't be bringing in 2 tight ends to run extra help or bring in Taylor Moton. So that's definitely a key there. Running back through these, Johantz back up here again. Cap, CMC, RMI, Cam, we're good. We just need reliable catcher who can create space or another tight end. We all know Norv loves his tight ends. Think Gates, Rudolph, and the guy who is taking the place of Gates now, obviously Hunter Henry. And San Diego, can't think of his name. That's Hunter Henry, Johantz. And that's actually a popular thing right now, Edgar, is a lot of people are starting to swing their number 1 picks towards, hey, Panthers are showing a lot of interest in this, Gesicki and Godart. And then there's Hayden Hurst is obviously a big one today, the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about, I've been about getting Greg Olson's replacement. But the first round is not where I see it unless you're getting the number 1 receiver, the number 1 tight end on the board. And even then, I mean, it's still a pass catcher. You're not getting a wide receiver, but you're still getting a weapon for Cam Newton.
Right.
Well, I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, what would you rather see Carolina do as far as getting – I'm all about getting max value. And Carolina's in somewhat of a position this year, in my opinion, to have to hit need at points in the draft. But what are your thoughts on tight end and getting that heir to Greg Olson? I mean, obviously the other year we missed out on Hunter Henry. Well, I think a lot of people were high on him.
I think that same thing with running backs, and I was thinking the same thing as you. Is like I'm a big believer in like studs and guys that can just do the job for you. If you invest like kind of in the middle, like you're kind of stuck in between 2 places. But I love like if you want to go with tight end, like go all in and get like this really top-notch guy that can't miss, right? Or just wait later. The problem with this class is that they tend to be they're just okay. Each of these prospects have flaws, and none of them are can't miss prospects. My favorite, my tight end one is Dallas Goedert from South Dakota State. Man, he's a beast in contested catches. He could fill that role that Kelvin Benjamin had when he was here, but like just throw the ball up and he could come down with it, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe all these could be better defined or refined blockers, but guys like Hayden Hurst, guys like Mike Gesicki, like they're really good, but like they'll take years to develop. They'll take some time, and so one of the things that was here during Cam's first year in Carolina was he had the double tight end attack with
Jeremy Shockey
and Greg Olson. So if they want to go the route of Mike Gesicki, like maybe that's the role that they want to do is like, dude, let's do a double tight end attack. But these last couple of years, they've really just focused on one and having a guy like Ed Dixon switch between tight end and fullback. But I would love to see them if they want to go that route, Mike Gesicki, like forget about the heir to the throne of Greg Olson. How about Greg Olson plus and have 2 of them at the same time on the field, and eventually grooming him and the throne for 2-3 years down the line.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to spend a first or second round pick on a tight end, you're going to want it to be a guy that can come in and contribute immediately. You're not going to want it to be another Manhurts or what was the other guy's name? Samoanson? Was that his name?
Yeah, Simonson.
Yeah, Simonson. Yeah, Simonson. you're not gonna want to use him like you did that and just waste a first or second round pick. I think you're gonna want a guy that can come in and contribute immediately. And obviously that Jeremy Shockey, a lot of fans get hung up on that as well. The Jeremy Shockey, Greg Olsen tight end duo from Cam's rookie year, and it was great. It was fantastic, and that might be something Norv would like to run more of, but it's all different on each coordinator, and there's no way we can sit here and say they're going to have as much success as they did then either. So,
right.
But I think if they're going to spend it on a guy, it's like they've always said, if you're spending a pick on a first and second round guy, you want all your picks to contribute immediately, but those two in particular have to be guys that can come in, start, and actually make, be effective, be impactful to a game. And I don't see them spending a first round pick on a tight end, especially, I'm not going to lie, I think I'd be kind of upset if they spent a first-round pick on Hayden Hurst.
Yep.
So that's my thoughts on tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to reading the tea leaves, again, Marty Hurney hasn't been a guy that invested a lot in tight ends, right? He either got them in free agency like Jeremy Shockey and didn't give him a ton of money. And let's not forget how much he gave up for Greg Olsen.
Yep,
he only
exactly.
traded a third-round pick for Greg Olsen. He didn't trade a first round. He didn't invest a first-round pick in Greg Olsen. So if they decide to go that route, I also agree. Like, one, I don't want to see them do it, but I also know historically, just like safety, Marty Hurney hasn't invested a lot in tight ends.
Yeah, and I think Billy Marshall actually mentioned it too. He traded away a lot for Greg Olsen, but he got a tight end who he knew was a performer because he's seen him in the league already. He had the experience in the league as well, so that was something else, that Hurney could look at. And I agree, you haven't seen that much from Hurney. I can't see him coming back and drafting a tight end first round. Second round, the Jasecki, maybe I still don't see that, though. I still think that's a reach. I see somebody dropping a comment in here, Dawn Garner, no point at getting any more third-plus round tight ends. That seems to be a waste. And at this point it does. But, I think Rivera also stated that Manhurts was going to get some more opportunities to prove his spot kind of up and down. I think he was more of a blocking role along with kind of Armah at fullback. Armah kind of got lined up at tight end at times as well. But, I don't see tight end early personally for me. And looking at, again, gauging interest off of these visits on Gene's site, the one with the most is Jasecki, and that's a Senior Bowl and a Pro Day. Oh, and Hayden Hurst, it was the other one we talked about. But was that considered a local visit?
It was considered a local visit because in a sense, for one thing, he came in during the local pro day that the Panthers ran. So all teams are allowed to bring in local prospects, either of the three FBS schools that are in their local area, or people that went to high school in the area. Hayden Hurst, because of where he went to school, he considered a local visit as opposed to a private visit. Okay. And that's just really just a way to, they only get 30, they're only allowed 30 private visits. So if you could sneak in Hayden Hurst as a local visit, I still have 30, I don't have to burn my 30 spots for bringing people in. So it's kind of a way to get someone in for a visit and a workout and get to meet them, but not count against your 30.
Gotcha, and that's kind of where they can sneak that interest away from us fans, trying to trick us we can't keep up with it. But then you got guys like Edgar and Gene and Billy over there. Billy's got facial recognition on his computer, I swear. But no, Edgar, again, guys, this is panthergf.wordpress.com, Gene Farrell's site, where all these guys are working in a team effort to keep up with these prospects visits and all the lists and stuff on everybody. Y'all be sure to check that out. Edgar, I can't thank you enough for joining us. I'm going to check these comments one more time. Okay, these people don't like tight ends on late picks. Carlton Cohen commenting saying, we invest late picks in tight ends that don't make the team. Well, I think we just went through that, so we're not going to beat a dead horse. But
it's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The proof is in the pudding, I guess, as they say, and the past shows that. So, and also Carlton saying there won't be any edge rushers worth the 24th pick, and I tend to agree with that as well. Like I said, I'm about safety or somebody in the secondary mainly. That would be safety or cornerback. Get a elite guy that's going to come in and be a starter, young, that you can work with for years and make impacts. So.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this, or another reading the tea leaves. So sure. Generally, when Marty Hurney was picking in the draft, Panthers were up and down, right? So they'd have a lot of picks that were in the upper half of the draft. but there was a few times where he had a pick that was in the 20s. And the very first time he had a pick in the 20s, it was a cornerback. It was Chris Gamble, and we know how that went, right? And so when we talk about their history, Martin Herning's history of hitting on these draft picks, like why was he so successful? He picked guys that were elite athletes that were really smart, right? So I'm trying to read tea leaves, trying to read value. I think somewhere along the line, if you look at Gene's website, historically, even not just for the Panthers, but other teams, like if I bring in a lot of the same position, I'm probably drafting that position, right? So you look at cornerback, you look at wide receivers, those are the top positions that they've brought in or they've contacted for visits or meetings and things like that. And I would say, like, hey, the first time he had a pick in the 20s, he picked a cornerback, he picked Chris Gamble. So I feel like, hey, maybe he'll try to repeat history with a Jair Alexander, a Josh Jackson. The news came out today that they worked out Isaiah Oliver, Mike Hughes. There's tons of picks that he could choose from that are top-end athletes that are really smart in how they play on the field.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, like we were talking about earlier, Josh Jackson fits that kind of Josh Norman frame. And Herney also drafted Norman. Isn't that right?
Yep.
His last year. Yeah. His last draft he had him. He drafted Norman. Now, granted, he got him late, but he fit that same caliber of guys. And Norman was also from Coastal Carolina, so he obviously didn't have as big a name as some others did going into that draft. But yeah, great stuff there, man. I love the tea leaves stuff. By the way, you're dropping some good facts there.
I don't have a life trip.
Oh no, hey, look, if you're keeping up with Panthers that much, it's not just a love thing, man. There really is a lot of work that goes into it once you start diving into it. I can't stress enough. I started this show thinking, this will be fun. I talk Panthers all the time. I keep up with everything. I dig and look into this stuff, and then you start a show and you start doing this mess, and it's like, hey, this actually does turn into some kind of work after a while. But if I can just sit and talk to guys like you, friends and whatnot, and talk Panthers and discuss with everybody, I'm a happy guy every day. Plus, the season never ends. There's no off season here.
No off season.
That's right. Well, guys, if y'all don't have anything else, I'll check one more time. Let's see. Okay, Salmon Cam wants to know Christian Kirk. Where would you think he would fall? I think he'll be there at 24. Well, possibly at 24, but I don't think he's coming to Carolina. If that's your question, what do you think, Edgar?
I think it's a possibility if they want to go wide receiver later. He's on the list of someone they brought in for a private visit, so there's some interest there. Explosive playmaker. He's not as thick as an Anthony Miller, but definitely dangerous. But he's kind of flown under the radar because he doesn't kind of fit the mold of an outside receiver. He's kind of been pigeonholed to like a slot-only wide receiver, and people that can only play slot wide receiver tend to go later in the draft. So I think he'll be there at 24, but if the Panthers go with something like him, it's because in that third round, I think it's the money round. They have 2 third-round picks this year. I think that'd be a good place to invest in a skill position player, a wide receiver, like a Christian Kirk, like an Anthony Miller. Some of my favorites, Traquan Smith out of UCF. There hasn't been any reported contact with him. But there's like a gold mine of wide receivers that you can get in that third round, and Christian Kirk could be one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that would be good value. I'd definitely take that. I still like, I know a lot of people are high on Kirk. I wasn't as high on Kirk this whole time as others were, and I'm honestly not as high on DJ Moore. I still like Michael Gallup. I don't think he's a guy the Panthers need to go for, but as a wide receiver, I do like him going into the NFL. I think he struggled from a lot of bad quarterback play. But again, I would rather have, if you're giving me a third round pick between Anthony Miller and Christian Kirk, give me Anthony Miller. That's where I'd fall on it.
Yeah, and something to add that's like interesting about the wide receiver group that they brought in. So like in the private visits, one thing that's fascinating to me in terms of reading tea leaves and what their thought process is, they brought in wide receivers that aren't the typical Dave Gettleman wide receivers, right? So when Dave Gettleman came in, he got a Devin Funchess, he got a Kelvin Benjamin, these giant twin tower wide receivers, right?
Yeah.
But now he's bringing guys in like Anthony Miller, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley. These are guys, even they just reported interest. Jordan Rodriguez of Charlotte Observer talked about that they worked out Deshaun Hamilton.
I like that too.
These shorter route runners, a guy like Michael Gallup too, like that could just burn up the field and get separation for Cam versus like these big long-armed guys that like have trouble separating. So I love the direction that the Panthers are going just by who they're bringing in for visits. These guys that are like shorter, that can get separation and help Cam out that way than just getting big guys because Cam's inaccurate, right?
Yeah, that whole myth that needs to be shattered. Jesus, oh man, it tears me up. Then you see him make all these throws that are just ridiculous tight windows. It's like, oh, he's not accurate. That's been my biggest thing the last 2 years was getting guys with separation. That's why I loved the McCaffrey and the Curtis Samuel back-to-back picks last year. It seemed that Gettleman was finally getting away from that kind of tall, dominating role. And, of course, Kelvin Benjamin didn't become the dominating receiver everybody thought, the big-body guy who would beat anybody. He was getting beat out by 5'10" cornerbacks, which should not be happening at his size.
Nope.
So give me a guy like Anthony Miller who's going to fight twice as hard at the ball as half his size and probably come up with it. I will take that. And then probably run for about 30 yards after the catch. That's what I want.
Yep. And Kelvin Benjamin did nothing after the catch. He gave you very little, right?
Yeah.
You'd be lucky if you got anything out of that.
Or would trip on a piece of grass or something. Yeah.
That's Brenton Burson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true, too.
Too soon.
Well, Edgar, I appreciate you coming on, man. Good stuff as always. And we'll get you back on the show sometime soon. And maybe, heck, I'll maybe talk to you on draft night. We'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll discuss something about that, too.
Yeah. Well, last question for you, Trey.
Yeah.
So money on the line. You're betting. Who are the Panthers picking at 24 in 2 weeks?
Oh. Right now I'm still going Justin Reed, man. I think
Okay.
I definitely think it's a secondary player. But I'm just gonna roll with Justin Reed because they brought in Cockrell and I think he is a starting caliber cornerback. And I think that pickup could go a little under the radar in the long run. Mm-hmm. But right now, safety is just a spot I think that is an absolute need. And I don't necessarily see you getting another guy like Justin Reed at 55. If he falls there and you get him, great. I will happily eat crow. But yeah, that would be my pick. Would be Justin Reed.
All right. Just wanted to know what your thoughts were.
What about you?
I'm gonna go Josh Jackson or Jair. I'm rolling with cornerback. I'm rolling with those two, and that's the vision.
Yeah. Hey, I'll take that. It's like the old adjective from back in the day. We used to say the front four can help the secondary. Well, a good secondary can also help the front four. So
Yep.
We'll roll with that. Well, like I said, guys, this is Edgar Salmingo. Where can they find? They can find you at Panthers Analyst on Twitter. That's easy to remember, right?
Yep.
Yeah, at Panthers Analyst. What's do you know Gene's tag on?
It's Black Blue Maniac.
Okay. And then also, I'll throw out Billy Marshall, too. I think he's Billy M_91 as well. Those guys have been knocking it out for the – Billy obviously doing stuff for Cat Scratch Reader, always putting out good scouting profiles and stuff, and y'all keeping up with the visits. Keep up the great work. Thanks again for joining, and I'll try to get you back up here soon, dude.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Y'all keep pounding.
You too.